Welcome to the Loud Quiet. Ooh, empty nester. Okay. What does that mean?
I think that actually probably is the theme of the empty nest. What are we doing? Let's do this. Let's do this thing. I don't know if I'm recording. Yeah, I am. Okay.
Great. Sans children. Just us. We need a tissue box up here. Follow along on our journey and maybe, we can learn from others.
Yeah. I don't have a clue how to be empty nester.
This is the Loud Quiet, living the empty nest. Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 41. For those of you who are regular listeners, we did take last week off. We needed, as I put on our post, just a brain break. We've just had a lot going on the last month, but if you did listen to the last episode and you got the amazing inspirational quote from Rick Denton, I did have it put on a coffee mug. Right. It's amazing how fast you can get stuff made.
So you surprised me with that yesterday, the day before, because you'd ordered some glassware for the kids, or for Tanner, and then you're like, oh, but here's a little early Father's Day as well. Yes. And so, yes.
So, maybe I'll start marketing it, and I'll put a little Loud Quiet on there. And
that's right. If anyone would like the merchandise, shall I read it?
Cool.
The memories of the past help reignite the excitement of the present and secure the stability of the future. Yes. And that came completely out of my fanny.
No,
that was
I know.
Not a plan.
And we actually went and Googled to make sure that you didn't hear that somewhere else, and took it as your own. But yes, so
if you'd like those mugs, and we can even add, you're right, we'll add the Loud Quiet logo on there.
$50.99 or something. I don't know.
That sounds good. I think you're missing a zero. $500. Well, $500
limited
if you want to,
edition.
We'll sign it. Yeah. And if you don't want it signed, we'll give it to you for $5 or something.
So there, I had to start with that little plug, and it was off center. It was going to bug me. So now if you'd like to
so now for the seriousness of today's episode. So clearly those of you that have been regular listeners, and if you're new, well, it's been a busy month because we've had graduations, we've had kids moving back in. We also had, as y'all know, my mom passed away in the earlier part of this month, or I guess technically last month because we're in June now.
I know.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So my mom passed away, as you can see here on the screen. We'll put a picture there. This was the image from her obituary. She passed away there May 7th. And then this week, or I guess now technically last week, but less than a week ago, we had my mom's memorial service. And that was a culmination of effort to get us to that point. And so the busyness we've been describing has been graduations, kids moving back, and then what does it mean when you've, the passing of a parent, and the passing of a parent who has suffered from a long-term disease, and what that's looked like. And so we thought we'd spend some time just, I don't know, maybe real-time live processing it.
Well, and I think, I know we mentioned briefly when we did our graduation wrap-up, yes, she passed away literally the week we were in Arizona of graduation. It was
the day after we celebrated his first two.
Yes.
And it was the day of that we were told it's imminent.
Yes. And, just migrating through that as parents to our kids who lost their grandmother, we made the choice not to tell them the day that we knew that it was probably going to happen, because that was Tanner's 2 big graduations. We had all of these fun things planned.
We wanted it to be about him. It wasn't. It's the activities, and I didn't want him to lose. And I can assure you, this woman here would not have wanted him to lose a bit of it, because she liked a good party.
And you do have to, that decision was not a hard one for us to make, but you do have to process, okay, are they going to be upset with us that we didn't tell them when they, are they going to be, there are things that you have to think about, but, and then even the next day when she did pass, we had just put Tegan on a shuttle to go back to her university. So we couldn't, and I mean, literally, we dropped her at the airport to get the shuttle. We drove away. Your sister called and said,
And the we, the we here
it's Tanner's in the back seat. Yes,
Clancy and I are in the car together, and everything you said is absolutely right. Tegan probably wasn't outside of the Phoenix metro area by the time that we received that call, and that again, that too was an easy choice not to let her know in the moment.
Right.
It's just
decisions that you don't think you're going to have to be dealing with. We're like, we're not going to call her when she's on a shuttle of random people and tell so, and that was also a hard. Because the three of us were still together, and she had gone back to pack up her dorm room and that kind of thing. And, we were like, do you want to come back and be with us? And, she luckily her friends were there. And so yeah, it just threw, I never pictured planning anyone's funeral because you just don't like to think about that. But planning it, being on FaceTime in the hotel room, picking out flowers with Rachel and trying to decide.
We were having conversations while we were walking on the street at times. Yeah. You had left to you and I were getting ready to head to the hotel pool, and then I stayed back and did some of that. Yeah, this was.
It was definitely.
And I guess I think the surrealness of it was more so that it was Tanner's graduation week, because we weren't done with his graduation week. If we'd been in Dallas, I probably would have bipped down to Austin and been with family, that sort of stuff. But it was never in question to go be together at that point. Now, I should say this, because I mentioned it was imminent. We did have a discussion around, and a mental processing and a discussion around, should I go back to Austin? There was actually the capability to do a day trip back to Austin, sort of a what if she passed. And this is going to sound strange, one of the blessings of Alzheimer's is this was a very long goodbye. I sit here with no regrets about the time that I spent with my mom during her sickness. We made an effort to make sure that I went down there monthly. You were there almost every other month. And so my goodbye to my mom had already taken place. Yeah. In fact, there's a specific, distinct moment where I said, I don't remember the exact words, but basically, whenever you're ready, Mom, we are ready. And that would be something I might, here's my little advice thing, is, you never know when they're going to pass. And certainly if you do have this long-term thing, I at least get to sit here without any guilt or regret, knowing that I spent the time that I needed, even though I didn't go back and I was not in the room the moment that she did pass. I'm thankful that she passed peacefully amongst family, but I'd already had the chance to say my goodbyes, and I feel good about that. I have no guilt.
Right. And that's, like you said, almost a blessing of a long-term illness, whereas you're not getting a phone call at your house in the morning saying,
because we've had the other side. Yes. There are perhaps listeners that don't know. My dad passed away unexpectedly on a trip to Colorado in 2003, and we did receive that phone call in the morning. And the shock of that, certainly, it's a completely different. We could spend more time. That has nothing to do with the empty nest right now, and that was a different experience back then.
But it does show the difference between, you, Jerry, Rachel had already kind of had some things planned for the service and where, and that, or for at least the
Great
there
side.
were some things already in the works. So we weren't just trying to figure everything out.
You're saying a little bit of, there were some things in the work. There's a whole different conversation. I think I'd actually like to almost choose for another episode that could actually be helpful on, hey, these are things you should be thinking of. Here's a great example. It took us a healthy discussion to determine, us being Jerry, Rachel, and me, to determine what her service would be. We each came at it with slightly different perspectives. In the end, that discussion ended up with a beautiful service that we'll talk about. It came to the right thing, but that was something that we were having to deal with in the midst of also grieving and processing in that aspect of it, that's a little nuts and bolts thing that you don't think about as much as, okay, the actual literal service, run of show, for lack of a better term. Who is going to do what?
So we did, you went down to Austin as soon as we got back. I then went down with you another time because, I don't think any of us realized, or at least the younger people in the group realized that, your mom passed away on May 7th. We couldn't even have her service until June 6th. Oh,
Sixth.
3rd. Sorry. Yeah.
Third,
My
yeah.
dates are all, yeah. It's almost a month. And you're just like, but we needed every bit of that month for what we had planned.
At first, we thought, it was there were two things that happened. One, another family ended up having someone that passed and got a specific time at the church the week before Memorial Day. Then there was Memorial Day. So we thought, oh, well, those two delays are really what's pushing out a month, and it feels long. Well, my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that we would have been prepared to do it with that. I'm almost thankful that family slipped in. And not just elements of planning, people's travel, not just ours, getting Tanner back. We were able to get Tanner back and all that, but there are people who drove in. There are people who
flew in from other countries.
Yeah, we actually had other countries coming in. And so it's something that, it took a long time, but it surprised us how long, but it was actually a good thing.
So we did go, sorry.
No. Cool.
So we did go down to Austin, and we went down, a day early because we had a couple of other things planned revolving around the service. But, we did get to go and do, one of our favorite things. These are the kids and the
cows
cousins.
at Amy's.
Yeah.
So the Arboretum is a shopping center in Austin. It's been around there since the 80s. I still remember going to the movie theater that was built there. It was Back to the Future and Top Gun were some of the first movies shown there. These are stone cows out there that are near a great ice cream shop called Amy's, and that's our tradition. And so these are the cousins together. So this is my sister's family and her two kids on the right, Kate and Charlotte, and then Tanner and Tegan, ours on the left. Yeah. So we got to do our Austin things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was fun. And we, went and walked up Mount Benel, and we
which one of the pictures from my mom's service is there. That is one of my favorite pictures and one of my favorite views of Austin. And so that was. I'm going to actually go, I want to come back to right there at that point in Mount Benel, but I want to talk about that trip that I took to Austin the day after we got back from Phoenix, because that was weird. I'd had the emotions of my mom passing. There were tears in the car. There were that. I didn't quite get slapped in the face with some of the loneliness that I was starting to feel until the moment that I landed in Austin. And Austin, for those that don't know, that's where I grew up. It's a key part of who I am. It's just, I declare it as my identity. Our family is, my side of the family is there. And something about landing in Austin, it was a dreary day, of course, so that certainly contributed to the mood. I just realized that things had changed. And I don't know, and I'm still accepting how things have changed. But when you are now a child without parents, my dad passed, my mom has passed, now you're sort of at the top of the generational heap. I do have a grandmother who's 99 years old. But you're at that top of the generational hierarchy. It feels weird, and you feel like alone. And it was being there that day in Austin, and it was good to spend the time with Rachel and Jerry and start to work on the things that we were starting to work on. That's where it really started to hit me that life is different now.
Well, and we're 50 and 51. Your sister's 47. Going to be 47 this year, I think. That is young to have lost both of your parents.
I certainly agree.
It's just, not luckily, but, our kids are in college. But, like, Rachel's kids are still young.
Yeah.
And so now they, they never even knew your dad.
Right.
Tegan didn't either.
No, well, and Tanner didn't know,
right,
but Tanner was able to at least have a physical co-presence with my dad for a year.
But, for them now, to not have grandparents
on that side, and as an aside,
both
thankfully,
of ours have
both sets of cousins here have great grandparents on the other side, so they will experience grandparents. It just you're saying something that is really, and I keep saying this phrase I haven't processed. I don't mind saying this. I'm going to start seeing a therapist 2 days from now, and maybe that'll be something we talk about. What does therapy in the empty nest world look like? The walking around the memorial, I know I'm jumping, we'll get there, but walking around the reception at the memorial, I actually had this thought of, they've got their parents. They've got their parents. They've got I realized that Rachel and I were this, not anomaly. It's a big world. There's plenty of people that have tragically lost our parents. Mine in worse situations than what we've gone through. I'm not trying to compare there. It just felt very clear that it was young for us. I think that's, to your point, that it was, oh my gosh, we have no parents, and everyone else that are our peers, most of everyone,
that were there,
have their parents.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting. So you talked about, we had on the night before the services, we had a group, well, which turned into be like 60 people.
It was so good.
It was. This was so much fun. And this is I put this picture of us with your mom's picture of, she's got her glass of champagne toasting, because that's what we kind of wanted this to be, a celebration. Come over, have some Prosecco and treats. Thank you so much to Rachel's friends. They did an amazing job putting together all the food. Tegan did an amazing job of organizing the crystal. I don't think I have that picture, but 83 crystal champagne.
And a lot of them were colored glasses that Mom had
It's
brought from Germany and that
stuff,
sort of thing. So,
so this was really fun. I just put a picture of the kitchen because this was.
I did do a few candid photos here. And sorry, Stephen.
And whatever. This was just a small group. I mean, there really were like probably 60. I think we ended up figuring out there were probably about 60 people there, and most of them stayed the whole time. But I put the picture of the kitchen because as everyone's eulogies were spoken, it was a lot lot food. There were
three people that gave eulogies, and all three talked about it. Yeah.
But it was.
And this picture is actually, you're right, the crowd was triple or quadruple this. There's another room that's just off to the side of this that was packed. Actually, some of the challenge was walking around. Yeah. And at the end of this, it truly was a situation of, we felt like we were out of words.
Oh yeah, the four of us went to just get something to eat, and nobody spoke a single word. And that was how it was on the trip home too, because that's a lot. I mean, and I will say, I was very proud of our kids. Tanner can schmooze with anyone and talk to anyone. Tegan, that's a little bit of a tougher thing for her, and she did she so was really good. I mean, I was really.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was actually really proud of both kids as well. That this is not something that is, well, one, there's not a playbook for this. We didn't really equip them. Like, we didn't go in and say, here's what you need to do. Here's how this will look like. This was their sort of first. And the way that they approached it. And yes, I made a joke that, and I think I said it to y'all, that, did y'all hear me saying the same phrases over and over? Yes. And that's normal, because you are appreciative. You run out of unique things to say. What was great is to hear all the stories that were being shared. And the kids even talked about that people would, tell them things, and they got to hear things that were meaningful.
And these people have been in your mom's, your dad's, and, Jerry too, lives for, a very long time, like a very, very long time. And so
there are people in there that went to medical school with my dad.
And I have their picture and later, but it's fun for them to see the kids too, because they know the kids. Most of them have met the kids,
right? But
they just hear your mom and dad talk about, your dad was so excited when Tanner was born, but your mom especially just talked about how, proud she was of them and everything. So, they got several, oh my gosh, you're a man, talking to Tanner, and oh my gosh, Tegan, you're, So it was.
Well,
when
their last awareness of these kids, let's take the Sherrills for example. I think probably the last time they really, really saw them, I guess weddings, but spending time would have been that lake trip that we took up to Arkansas. Spending time, long.
The Caymans. They went with us.
I can't remember the
Caymans.
order of that. Either way, the point is, we're talking about toddlers or elementary school kids, and suddenly you've got a law student and a sophomore in college.
Yeah. So let me see what's next. Okay, so then we moved on to the
This is the graveside.
Yes, and let me just say, I am so glad. Rachel came up to me and she's like, "Do you think it's inappropriate if we take a picture?" I was like, "No." I said, I don't think we have a single picture from your dad's service. And I said, "This is a time of celebrating your mom. You know, yes, it's sad, but we're all together. This group doesn't get all together that often anymore." So
Vicky, I believe it was her, the coordinator who was helping us with the service at the church, specifically called out, "You will be taking pictures." So she had planted some of those seeds in our head, and I thought, really, at the cemetery? Yeah. And I did have to turn around. I said, "Hey, folks, remember, this is a celebration, so we are going to smile. It's okay to smile," because some folks might wonder, are you uncomfortable smiling? Is that wrong to smile? No. And part of it, so we can explain this, when you're suffering from Alzheimer's, there's both the grief that someone passes and the relief that they are now pain-free. And so that's part of the celebration. And we have a great confidence that due to my mom's faith, she is in paradise right now. And that's where the celebration comes from. We can enjoy the life that she had here on earth and have that be our memories, and celebrate the fact that she's pain-free. So smiles are 100% appropriate here.
And thank goodness. I mean, I am kind of glad that it was a little overcast that morning, because it was the humidity in Austin was off the chart.
We're not going to do a weather report other than I'll say, I'm not kidding, 92%.
I keep questioning, are you sure we want to come back and live here at some point?
That's a separate conversation, because I certainly had some seeds planted there as well.
So then we went back to the church, had a great lunch that another group of friends of Linda's had organized. That is one thing. When you live in a place for so long, people want to do something for you. And so take their help. Take anything you can at this time, because your brain is so focused on, making sure everything else goes right that sometimes you don't think, oh my gosh, we haven't eaten, we haven't done. So, I would say
there's a thread there too and something that our generation, I'm looking at you, me, our generation may not be doing as well at, and that is developing a community that would be there to take care of that. This was fostered through Sunday school and
medical
relationships and those sorts of things, that there was this community of folks. Wine group. As we've gotten so isolated behind our phones, behind a faux relationship in social media, are your Facebook friends going to be the ones that actually show up and serve you lunch at the passing of a family member? And so that's something that is a challenge in the empty nest. It's a challenge for our generation in general.
Well, and I don't know, how many people stay in one place anymore. I think it's actually I think it's kind of shifting back a little bit, because I will say we haven't known too many of our group that's moved, but I don't know. So, but yeah, so this was the service. The sanctuary looked beautiful. Rachel and I were like, "Ooh, the flowers look nice,"
because they had picked the flowers.
So,
and this is, for those listening, this is a picture of Tanner giving his portion of the eulogy. There was Lynn Parrish, Tanner, and I gave eulogies. Lynn was brilliant. Tanner was spectacular. It was wonderful.
Yours was very, very, very good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
it. Very good. I mean, and you heard that from so many people. So.
I was surprised. I expected to have challenge with emotion, and I think that's something that needs to be, I don't know when or how, but talked about, that the tears are somewhat inconsistent and not overpowering.
I was shocked at all three of y'all, and not shocked like, oh my gosh, how are they holding it together? Because Lynn barely, she choked up kind of at the end of hers. Tanner didn't. You didn't. I was so impressed with y'all's composure, all three of y'all. And everything was so heartfelt. It was not like, I was just I don't think that I could do it. I don't think your sister knew she couldn't do it either. Right. That's why you spoke for both of y'all. It's just, I was just really, really impressed with the composure that
Yeah.
all three of y'all had.
Well, and I like that. I certainly I appreciate that. Right, to use the generic phrase. I don't think that a losing composure would be inappropriate there either.
No.
What I'm bringing up here is almost I don't even understand it fully myself, that there are moments of emotion, and I think it has to go back to the fact that it's been 3 to 4 years of a long disease decline.
I think it also goes back to the fact that there was a month in between.
Oh yeah,
because your dad's was, what did we say, 4 days?
4 days we figured out.
That one, and younger person, that one was way more emotional.
Well, yeah,
than this,
the unexpected passing for sure.
But I think that month,
kind of numb things, perhaps,
and because there were just so many other things outside of just the actual service going on that.
I want to talk about that. Let's keep going through this. I want to come back to that specific thing here, because I'm sensing a lot of that right now. But I want to come back to that a lot of things outside of the service.
So that was that. This
Yay.
okay. So I did. This is a picture of me and my college roommate, Kristen, who happens to live in Round Rock now. But we're in the family room, and I see her walk by. I was like,
"What are you?"
Oh my gosh! Never would I have expected her to come. And, she's like, well, I live here. It was so thoughtful. And she actually said something that you kind of alluded to. She said, you have to show up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that mm-hmm. put into I was like, yeah. And I don't know that I do that. Mm-hmm. So that was nice. Okay.
Seeing Kristen there showed me something about ceremonies like this, to the point of the showing up. It was really amazing to see names and faces that I didn't think would be there. This is from your college roommate. There were just people that come out of the woodworks, if you will, and it shows you the impact that my mom had on others. And in the case of Kristen, my mom didn't know Kristen. Kristen doesn't know my mom, but Kristen knows you.
Yeah.
And Kristen knows that she wants to be there for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was nice.
The table that you see behind there is a bunch. We didn't do any of that.
No, because I didn't take a picture.
This is a good idea, and I hope that we see this more. There were a bunch of objects and photos that were put out across 3 different tables that represented my mom.
Yeah.
From her needlepoint loom to different photos, and that allowed. And of course, there was the photo video taking place in the screens around the ceremony or the reception. But getting to see some of those objects laid out, I think, was neat for a lot of folks who may have had a memory with those, and also just to see a little more color behind who she was.
Yeah. And again, thank you to Rachel's friend, Stacy, I think is her name. She did an amazing job of putting all of that together on the back.
Stephanie?
No, I thought it was, no.
Stacy, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Stacey.
Yeah.
So she did a great job of putting all of that, making the display look nice and everything. And
so if you need funeral memorial object design work, we can put you in touch with somebody who's really great in Austin.
So here's the picture of that.
Yeah, so I'll explain. The Cheryls are on the left side of this photo. The Minots are on the right side of the photo. This is back to truly med school internship. The Minots actually lived in Germany at the same time as my parents lived in Germany, which is when I was born. So there's a picture of their son Ray, not here, of course, but an old picture that he's in lederhosen, I'm in diapers. So there are memories that go all the way back. The Cheryls, Bill Cheryl, Dr. Bill Cheryl, these are obviously both medical families. He was, I don't know if he was actually top of his class or he was second in his medical class. He met my dad and shot down to something like 20, 30, 40, like his, and he said it was the best 2 years of his life. So my dad had some influence on him, but it was just, it's great to see these people have been a part of, I mean, try to think about that. That would be, well, this is your Kristen.
Yeah.
Right. This would be my Scott, Rick, and Phil. They're people that you've known for decades. Yeah. Half a century.
And we and our kid have traveled with these people as well. We've gone to the Caymans. We've gone to the lake house in Arkansas. I can't remember if they were on the Germany trip or not, but you know,
you're allowed not to remember because
Yeah.
that's where you were pregnant with
yeah,
Tegan,
no, I
so
know,
memories
but-
are very fuzzy.
Yeah. So, but it wrapped up. The service was beautiful. The pastor who did the litany, it was amazing.
She didn't know my mom,
No.
and just by the obituary and a 10-minute conversation delivered her a homily. I think that's their word
homily,
for it.
sorry. So litany, I don't know.
I don't
words,
know.
Yeah.
A homily
Yeah.
that kind of, I was sitting there going, man, how do we follow that?
Yeah.
Thankfully, it was okay. But
It was very,
yeah,
very good.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. Everyone was like, she has an amazing
her voice was spectacular.
Yeah. And I think Kristen said, I'd like to have it on a recording to fall asleep to at night. I mean, it was just, and come to find out, she had been a trial lawyer before. And Tanner said, I knew it. He said she delivered her words like a lawyer delivers words. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, but it was just a really nice service. All the people that helped at the church and we interacted with were great. But yes, we were exhausted. And like I said, no one said a single word on the way home.
Do you have any more photos queued up?
I do, but it's a special one.
Oh, okay. I want to talk about, man, we're so long here already.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about, folks, listen to it on 2X if you're thinking it's going long. This is kind of near the end of it. You can see the room is almost cleared out. There's very few people left. We were just about to start unloading loading, I guess, the stuff into the car. And I left the reception room to walk across the church complex to get our car. And as I was walking, I had this thought, that's it. And it hit me. We'd had all of this activity planning, getting to this moment. My mom passed, but then we still had the memorial to plan for. And At that point, the official ceremonies acknowledging my mom, celebrating my mom, our focus on that was over. And yes, there's a ton of business because estates, it doesn't matter if they're big or small, are a pain in the butt to deal with. But the non-business side of it, that was it. And I still right now don't know exactly what that means. It feels weird, which is too simplistic to say. And I have even thought about, because we're talking about Monday, 6 days ago. It's weird to me right now that I don't think of that more often. Or what's even more strange is how there are many times that I don't think about it at all because we've had so many distractions. We spent time getting Tanner, helping him find an apartment. I won't go into that because that could be an episode in and of itself.
Yeah.
That moment walking across the courtyard hit me in a way that I think I'm still dealing with now.
Well, and I think, if we hadn't already had other stuff planned, because we did have some things that we already were obligated to back here, it would have been nice for us to just get on a plane and go somewhere.
I said that, didn't I?
We just couldn't because we did have obligations back here. But I think because there were a lot of things that had to get done in that month, and because we wanted to have something at the house, we had to kind of get the house in order. We had again, you had to fly down to go plan the service. I flew down one day to help you and Rachel get the house ready and go through 500 pictures and narrow them down to 125. There were just things. So yeah, it was a month full of, okay, text this. Okay, wait, Jerry needs this. Okay, right. And now, yeah, it's like,
it's weird.
It's just, and I think what's really going to be weird is when you and I go back later this month. Look, we're only going for a day trip, so there won't be enough time, I think, for weirdness to set in, but it will be very different. Like we said, your mom had already we had already lost part of your mom.
Oh, I
for
said
the
that her
past,
soul
you
was already
know,
gone, I believe.
for the past 4 years, but she was still there,
Mm.
and we would still go see her, and so yeah, it is.
That's,
It will
and
be
that's what I mean
interesting.
by the relationship to Austin, the relationship to my family. We didn't even talk about that. What does that mean when the quote reason, right? I started flying to Austin once a month. I had under focused on Austin for a period of time until I got that gig in Dell. It kind of reconnected, and then we started making more of Austin. But it was really my mom and her sickness that got me going down there once a month. Well, okay, I still am intending to do that for Nana. Still, what does that mean? What are those changes? What does that look like? What does that mean? I don't know. And that's why I have an appointment Tuesday morning to talk with a recommended therapist.
So yes, I did save one gem for last because as we were going through the
Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You know I have production control over the edits. Oh, Dios mío. Why?
because it's just such a good.
Gosh.
So there.
So is this going to be the thumbnail for the episode?
If you're not watching, this is a senior photo shoot, and
Oh,
I mean,
jeez. I look like I'm straight out of
Jersey, like you're like some.
I could have been
you
an
know.
extra on The Sopranos.
Oh gosh, because it just
Gold chain,
it
black
just makes us
turtleneck,
laugh.
mushroom hair. Having hair, though, that's kind of cool. You know, actually, I do remember that hair that you see right there. It's curled its way. No, you don't have to go back. It's so wavy, but its length actually touched. If it would straighten, it went to the top of my lips. I could actually get it all the way down there.
So there, just had to end on a laugh.
Thanks.
So.
I imagine that selfishly, we may spend more time talking about what this means, how it adjusts, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that next week will be as heavy. Heck, we may talk about what it means to find a kid an apartment in the city.
Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we had this chance. And those of y'all that listened and viewed, I'd love to hear your stories. Some of you have lost parents. And so what does that mean? How did you go through this? I'll say it again, selfishly, so that I can learn how to do it. How can a spouse learn to go through that and support that? What does that look like? You've lost a relationship too. And so what does that look like? Don't know.
Yeah. No, there's lots of things to explore with this. Like we've said, just even on the just logistical side of things. So not necessarily emotional, but yeah. So
well,
there you go.
I'm glad that you ended. No, I'm not glad that you ended on. I'm marking it on tape here that I am opposed to that image, but I will not edit it out.
Okay.
Oh goodness, Clancy.
All right.
It was fun. Another episode of The Loud Quiet, Living the Empty Nest.